Okay, so what I want to do is walk you through a lesson for perfect competition. But before we begin, let's look at our learning targets. So at the end of this, you should be able to sketch side-by-side graphs for the perfectly competitive market and the perfectly competitive firm to represent the three possible conditions. One where the firm is earning a short-run economic profit, one when it's earning short-run economic losses, or lastly, when it is achieving short and long-run equilibrium. Also, in the course of this, we'll review how to locate or find the profit maximizing output for the firm, and in the case of economic losses or profits, how to shade the area that is representing their losses or profit. So before I walk through each of the different situations, I thought you might want to just get a peek ahead what each of those situations would look like just for the firm. So this is not with the regular side-by-side market and firm graph yet. But what you'll notice here is that we've got graph A is the firm when it is able to achieve a normal profit or zero economic profit. And this is the normal long-run equilibrium situation for the firm. This is what the curves, average total cost, average variable, and marginal cost would look like. And then this one line across here would be representing the market price, which becomes the firm's price, also its demand, marginal revenue, and average revenue curve, what we call Mr. DARP. The graph B shows this firm under a different situation. Notice I've tried to keep the cost curves exactly the same. All I've done is change where the market and price for the firm comes in as a horizontal line. And in this case, because that price is higher, it's above some of the points here where marginal revenue and marginal cost are equal is our optimal output. And at that level, we are above average total cost at that quantity, and the area shaded in green is the rectangle representing the economic profits that the firm is currently earning. But that again is only in the short run. In the long run, because of free entry and exit, all of those profits are going to be driven out of the market as new firms enter. The last graph gives us a peek at what the situation looks like if we have short-run economic losses. Now the firm and market price, the Mr. DARP here, is just equal to our minimum average variable cost. And you may recall that the minimum average variable cost curve value, that is also known as our shutdown price. So any price at or below that, the firm is indifferent about shutting down at minimum AVC. Anywhere below it, they definitely are shutting down. But the difference between our average variable and average total cost curves at the quantity where MR is equal to MC, that output level, creates a rectangle we shaded here in red to represent the economic losses. So that's a peek of the three situations for the firm: short and long run equilibrium, short run economic profit, short run economic losses. Oh, and I should mention with short run economic losses, again, that's a short run condition only. When those firms do experience economic losses, firms exit the industry and eventually return the situation back to short and long run equilibrium. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to show you is the situation step by step to draw our short and long run equilibrium side by side market and firm graph. And the reason that is because this is generally one of the more common ways that the free response questions on the AP exam start out. They have you begin by showing the firm and market in short and long run equilibrium, and then you're asked to do some changes and things. It's also common that even if you didn't start here, if you started with economic losses or profit, they would want you to demonstrate or show what would happen to get the firm and market to that new short and long run equilibrium. So knowing where that is and how that goes is probably our first best step. So you could begin anywhere you wanted, but I'm going to start over here on the market side, and we've drawn these for a long time now, right? Just the typical market supply and demand curves, and so we're assuming this is a perfectly competitive market, that all of the costs and benefits are internalized. In other words, there are no externalities. And so I'm going to call that the market price PM and the market quantity QM. Now you may recall that perfect competition, firms are price takers. They have absolutely no market power. None of their individual actions can influence the market in any way. They are all insignificant, just like one drop of water in an ocean. There are many, many buyers, many, many sellers, none of them large enough to do anything. So being a price taker means that we're going to carry this market price over to the firm graph on the right. And the market price now becomes the price to the firm, PF. And then we're just going to draw a perfectly elastic or horizontal demand curve at that price, because the firm, again, because it's small and relatively insignificant in the scheme of the market, they can sell as many or as few units at the market prices they want. And so that's why it's perfectly elastic. If they try to charge any price higher than the market price, they're going to sell none. So we realize that because every unit is sold for the same price, that this is going to be called what we call Mr. DARP. The marginal revenue, the additional revenue generated by each unit sold, is equal to the marginal revenue. This also represents the demand curve for the firm. Again, because every unit is sold the same price, the average revenue per unit is also equal, and then again P for price of the firm. So look, it's Mr. DARP. Yeah, we've got Mr. DARP here. Next, we just have to draw in those very familiar cost curves that we know and are familiar with from our last unit. The ones that are significant for the firm in its decision making would be the average total cost curve, the average variable cost curve, and marginal cost. Now, I'm going to say that, what I like to do is kind of draw in my marginal cost curve first, because if you recall, marginal cost is always going to intersect the average total and average variable cost curves at their minimum values, and that gives me a kind of reference point to do that. Next, I'm going to draw in my average total cost curve. So I want it to be just tangent in the situation what we're talking about here, when we've got the short and long run equilibrium. We want marginal revenue to be equal to marginal cost right at minimum ATC. And so that's what I've tried to do here, is to show that intersection in that way. Then I also want to draw my average variable cost curve. Remember, average variable cost curve is below the average total cost curve, where marginal cost intersects with it, minimum AVC. That is known as the firm's shutdown price. The vertical distance at every quantity between the average total and average variable cost is equal to the average fixed cost. So we don't draw it in and clutter up the graph. But these are the elements then that show what the cost curves would look like and where they would be positioned in relation to our price for the firm, or the Mr. DARP, marginal revenue, demand, average revenue, and price. If we were trying to show short and long-run equilibrium. In other words, the firm is earning zero economic profits or a normal profit. We only have one thing left to do: determine our optimal output, the profit maximizing output for the firm. And the golden rule is that marginal revenue needs to be equal to marginal cost. So we're going to say right there, that's QF, where QF is the optimal output, profit maximizing for the firm in this situation.